In this episode, we're going back to basics and talking about hosting platforms. Now, a hosting platform is where your podcast sits or is hosted on the internet.
It's how you connect your podcast to the podcast apps or directories like Apple or Spotify. And setting up a hosting platform can seem pretty overwhelming, I think, when you're starting off. There's lots to think about, lots to get right. But fear not, here are 3 simple steps to get you started.
Step 1, don't spend too much time thinking or worrying about which hosting platform you choose. They all do a similar job. Most of them charge a monthly or annual subscription. It's normally about $10 per month. Some of them have additional features. Spotify for podcasters, for example, allows you to record and edit directly on the platform. Some of the other ones give you the option of advertising once you get above a certain number of listeners, but that's normally quite high, like 10,000 listeners per episode. So some of the ones that we've used are Omni, Audio Boom, Acast, and this podcast is hosted on Spotify for podcasters, which was formerly known as Anchor, which is free. But don't worry too much about choosing them. Choose one. You can always change it at a later date.
So step 2, get your settings right. On your hosting platform, there are various settings you need to think about when you first upload your audio, whether it be your episode or your trailer. These are things like the episode description, whether it contains swearing or explicit words, and keywords, etc. It doesn't take too long to do, so try not overthink it. But there are things to think about, such as the category your podcast is going to appear under. The category is important because that's where people might search for specific podcasts. If you're struggling to do this and to work out which category you should be under, have a look at other podcasts in your genre for ideas. Try and get all these settings right when you first do that first bit of audio upload, your trailer, but you can go in and change them later on if you make a mistake or you want to update them.
And also on the categories, think about the most crowded categories like true crime and comedy, because that's going to be much harder to stand out in those categories. And then on to step 3, you need to connect to podcast apps or directories. So most people listen to podcasts through their mobile apps. The main ones are Apple, Spotify, and Amazon Music, but there are loads of other ones such as Pocket Casts. Once your hosting platform is set up correctly, when you upload a new episode, it will automatically be pushed out to those directories. And that happens using a bit of code called an RSS feed, which you don't need to know too much about. But you do need to have accounts with all of those apps or directories, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, etc. And you need to then make sure your hosting platform is linked to them. Some hosting platforms make it easier than others to connect to those apps. Most of them have got a step-by-step guide somewhere on their website, but it's really important to get it all set up correctly. Otherwise, your podcast won't appear in those main apps that people listened to them on. But the good news is, once that's all set up and connected, you don't need to upload your podcast to all those different places. You just upload it to your hosting platform and let the RSS feed do its work. And also, just to mention, once your show is connected to those apps, have a look at how it appears in them. Can you see the artwork? Can you read the titles, the episode descriptions, etc.? And another thing to mention, if like me, you feel like you're drowning in passwords and accounts, use a password manager, which remembers all of your passwords for you. I use Keeper.
So just to recap those 3 points, don't overthink your options, choose one hosting platform and get started. You can always change later. Get your settings right, choose your categories well, and make sure your podcast appears on the main apps. You can add to others later on if you want to.